Hey, folks, welcome back to Amped Up with David Shuster. I'm Cliff Schecter here along with David Shuster, and we're pretty damn amped up today because we have an
Oh
awesome.
my God, I'm amped up, Cliff.
How amped are you?
Look, can we just should we just bring him in? Is he in there
He
yet?
is not here yet, but as soon as he is here, we will bring in well, he will need no introduction, but we'll introduce him anyhow because we're cool that way. In the meantime, David, I think we should mention to folks how proud we are of the fact that Melissa Corrigan, amazing story. David joined her to write it and bring his expertise because David is brilliant that way. And we just heard that impeachment articles, Democrats obviously will need some Republicans for them to be introduced, but have drawn up articles, I believe, of impeachment. I haven't read the whole thing yet against Pete Hegseth. And we like to think we played a little bit of a role on that because
there's every indication that the impeachment move, of course, which we've been advocating for a while, both has to do with Signalgate when Pete Hegseth was putting military bombing operations on an unsecured chat, but also because of the Caribbean boat strike, specifically the September strike in which 2 survivors were killed with a follow-up strike. And a lot of members of Congress were horrified by this, and that violates rules of law and rules of war, et cetera, et cetera. And then our piece that we added is that it is a requirement in the U.S. military that when you bring on a detainee, when you've got a prisoner of war, you have to document it. And the Navy, the protocol is you document it these days with photographs and video. So there was an October strike in which 2 people survived. The U.S. military plucked them out of the water, brought them on the USS Iwo Jima, a U.S. Navy ship. And there was they made photographs and videos and did the normal documentation. And then 2 hours later, orders came that no, every record of these guys having been on the ship must be deleted. That is
never a red flag.
It's like so outrageous in so many levels. It's against the law. It's against Navy protocol. Now, apparently one of the guys was in pretty bad shape from the bombing, and he was supposedly taken back to Venezuela. It's not sure if he's alive or not. The other guy was apparently repatriated to Ecuador, which immediately released him because they said there's no evidence he did anything wrong. It was a fisherman. So, but the fact that the military is engaged, at least in this ship and perhaps others, in an effort to try to scrub the record, to try to hide things, to try to bury things, keep them away from the public, and even keep them away from the military chain of command is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, they were disappearing people is what they were doing there.
Right.
They were engaged in an entire effort, and that's why you need to ask yourself, gee, why? To make it that this never happened. These 2 guys were never aboard the ship. They never dropped them off anywhere. And if Melissa hadn't gotten a hold of these documents, nobody would know this, that this had ever happened, because that was what they were attempting to do. Because, again, as David just described, numerous illegalities, alleged at this point, but well, I don't even know. We have documentation. So are they alleged? I guess it has to be a court of law, I guess, conviction. It has to be a conviction in a court of law, something that he didn't give. Pete Hegseth doesn't give to people that are on fishing boats, because apparently they're not worthy of it. But we will give him that benefit of the doubt. However, I do see Chris here, although I don't see a picture yet. So I don't want to add him to the stage.
By the way, might as well just sort of give it away. It's not just any Chris. It is the Chris Matthews.
Yes,
who's going to be joining us on our show, and I am like beyond excited for this for all kinds of reasons that I'll explain as soon as Chris is with us. People who know anything about maybe my background or MSNBC's background will remember, hey, Shuster, weren't you a hardball correspondent for 4 or 5 years? I sure was. Chris Matthews was my boss and friend and mentor, and he remains my friend to this day. I love the guy. I mean, so if, no matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody feels, Cliff, I love Chris Matthews literally almost as much as I love you.
So I mean, that's high praise, because I know you're loved. No, yeah, and I can't even, the Philly connection, where I spent time, the campaign knowledge, what I learned from reading, which I'm going to tell him about. We can get him on here. If you're, I don't know, Chris Palazar, if you're anywhere, if you're listening, I see Chris here, but we don't see his picture, his image. And I don't want to add him.
While we set this up, there's one other aspect, and we're talking about the Caribbean boat strikes, and we're going to get into this with Chris Matthews in a moment as well. The other aspect with the Caribbean boat strikes is, you recall that it was a week ago, I think, when Donald Trump said, oh, yeah, I have no problem releasing the video of the follow-up strike that killed those 2 guys that survived the September 2nd attack. Now we're starting to hear from rumblings from the Pentagon and military leadership. No, the American people can't handle this, that would inflame the public to see the close-up videos, which the military had of these guys literally being waving, hoping for somebody would rescue them, and then being shredded on video, on camera. And Cliff, this gets back to something that you and I actually talked about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, having this discussion about the debate within Al Jazeera that has had for many years. When Al Jazeera started an American channel, it was part of, 8, 9 years ago, there was a running debate about how much military footage should an American audience be exposed to. And the argument from Al Jazeera was, war is horrible. The American public should see this. We show it across the Middle East.
Right.
We should show people the horrors of what war really is. And in some ways, Al Jazeera ended up deciding, because of efforts to get on, cable channels and distribution, that they were going to sanitize horrible images in the way that, the mainstream media does to this day in America. But we're having that discussion again now in a certain political context, because there's the military and certain members of Republicans were saying, no, the American people, this will inflame things. This will be out of context. The American people can't handle this, so we should not release the video. And then there's the other argument about, well, wait a second, the U.S. military engaged in this, and if the Trump administration wants to defend the killing of narco-terrorists, they should be able to say, we're releasing the video and Americans can see it as graphic as it is.
No, I'm sorry. That it has to be, as far as I'm concerned. That is what turned folks against Vietnam. It's what turned people against the Bull Connors of the world and in favor of civil rights. It's one of the arguments we made when I did work for Everytown with Michael Bloomberg, that we wanted to get images of some of these schools released if the parents okayed it. We would never do that without them okaying it. And they wanted to, and that Congress kept blocking it, and others did, because they knew if people saw what these assault rifles did to kids, that would change everything. Let's see. He's on the phone with Chris. We'll be there ASAP. Okay. He's on his way. He's talking to, I think Chris is talking to Chris. There's Chris.
Now, Cliff, I mean, as somebody that, when we talk about graphic videos, and we've gone back and forth over, for example, the Charlie Kirk assassination that spread like wildfire. There were a lot of kids and people, of a certain age.
Yes, we have to be careful of kids.
We're horrified. And so I do feel like I get the efforts to try to restrict something so graphic and macabre from kids and teenagers and that sort of thing. But there's got to be some way that we can ask for, I don't know, some responsibility through, YouTube and the various platforms that are going to broadcast this. We know that the broadcast networks will digitize it and sanitize it and all that sort of thing. But I still feel like there's got to be some way that the adults in the United States, people who are voting, have to see this. They have to understand what has been done in our name.
You do YouTube videos. I've done YouTube videos. You check whether it's for children or not, whether it's not supposed to be for children. They do have a monitoring system. There are things they do that I think are crazy, but this is one of the good things. I don't want my kids seeing that image of Charlie Kirk was horrific. I don't want my kid. Well, at this point, my kids maybe are old enough, certainly my older son, but you don't want young kids seeing it. And that's not what I'm advocating here, but adults who vote, adults who take part in our system and have a say on whether assault rifles are out there, have a say on whether we bomb Venezuelan boats, have a say on anything else we do, have a say on whether we send arms to Ukraine when Russia is attacking. They need to see these images and understand the horror of what is going on. And if they don't, then we're doing a disservice, because they're not really making decisions with all the information as far as I'm concerned. We can't hide from reality. Again, kids are different, but I think adults, these are things we need to face. And if you can't face looking at people that have been, blown up in an attack, have been killed while just sitting in their school, then maybe that decision should be easy for you, that these are the things we shouldn't be doing, or these are the weapons we should be restricting.
Yeah. And maybe I'll be open-minded. Maybe Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas, Republican, maybe he was correct when he said he found nothing disturbing about the image of these two guys being blown apart. My theory is that the reason he didn't find it disturbing is because you have to have a conscience in order to find anything disturbing, and I'm not sure he's got one. But okay, if he thinks that the American people are used to these grainy images, these gun camera videos of the enemy being destroyed, and people will be okay with that, fine. Then all the more reason that the video should be released.
Well, I have a simple question. I think, it's sort of rhetorical and then answers it all about Tom Cotton, which is, have you ever seen the man smile? Ever? Like in everything I write about him, like, I mean, every time he goes on TV, this dour, I don't even understand, as somebody who, like you, who's done media training, who understands what leads to people, being successful on televised platforms, video screens, why anyone would send Tom Cotton onto a screen. I don't, but they keep doing it. Maybe everybody else over there is scared and they're like, well, at least he doesn't look as frightening as Ted Cruz, so put him out there. I mean, I don't know, because Tom Cotton does not give your party a good image. I don't. Again, if it's just about, we're talking about the image, you get John Thune out there, who comes off as a much nicer, likable guy, which is frustrating sometimes when he's doing awful things. But he does. Like, that's the kind of person you want on there, not Cotton, who, again, as you said, I mean, he doesn't, it's not like you just sort of like, oh, I wonder if he has a conscience. He makes it quite clear he doesn't, and he almost revels in the destruction, which is really kind of
while we're waiting here, some other news. The Miami mayoral race last night, Democrat won by 19 points. This is the first time in 30 years Democrats have won the Miami mayor's office. And it's also, I think, the first woman to be mayor. The freak out among some conservatives, because the candidate, she ran on affordability and against, the Trump economy, and Latino voters responded very strongly for it. And so you have a lot of Republicans, at least the ones that I saw on Fox this morning, who are flipping out, saying danger zone here. What do you make of it?
Well, so the two groups that sadly Republicans, I'd say, tricked, conned, whatever, a lot of into voting for them, were Gen Z, particularly Gen Z white males, and Latinos, particularly Latino males, where it was horrifically, like, they got 48% of Latino males. I mean, almost half. Those are the groups they are precipitously crashing with. Because it turns out, sadly, and I'm not going to defend this mentality, I think this mentality is awful, but some of these Latino males and Latinos in general, and again, this isn't picking on Latinos, all sorts of people do this, which is they say, well, I came here legally, or I came here before and whatever, and now they're coming in, and it's sort of a hierarchy. But what they thought was going to happen is the criminals would be sent away, or people they didn't know who had come here, and hadn't gotten legal status, whatever. Instead, we got people who are trying to get legal status, getting pulled out of lines, getting pulled out of courts, kids being, ripped through broken car windows and hogtied. And I think in many of these cases, some of these folks, family members of theirs, who weren't family members that were criminals, and weren't family members. And so you've got that. And Latinos, I mean, I'm trying to find the numbers. I can find them quickly, but I mean, like, it has turned hard against.
Oh, I just saw, polling the other day that, Donald Trump was plus, if you talk about Gen Z.
Yeah, the Gen Z.
Donald Trump was plus 10, I think, back in February. So, it was something like 55, 45, 55 approve, 45 disapprove. He's now minus 47 with the same demographic.
How do you go negative 57 points? You know how we're going to find that out? We're going to ask Chris Matthews, because anybody knows about politics and the workings of politics and polling, I believe it has to be Chris Matthews.
Well, that's kind of you, Cliff.
Hello, Chris.
Chris, welcome.
All right, I'm going to do the introduction here.
Shuster.
I'm going to do the introduction. So as I said, I love Chris Matthews, just flat out. So full disclosure, I love the guy. I worked for him for 5 years. Chris is a New York Times bestselling author of Hardball and so many other books about the Kennedys, including the latest book, which is Lessons from Bobby, 10 Reasons Robert F. Kennedy Still Matters. A lot of people know Chris from MSNBC and all the stuff he does. He's also on Substack. And Chris, you've got a special treat here, because I don't know how much you know about my buddy Cliff Schecter, but Cliff Schecter is a Kennedy file, and Cliff cut his teeth in political campaigns in Philadelphia.
Where?
I did. Yeah, I did. Well, so I went to the University of Pennsylvania as an undergrad. I was there in the early 90s. And so I started working, one of my favorite people ever. It was a campaign manager named Fran McCloskey, this old sort of gruff Irishman. Like, I loved him. He's chain smoked, cursed every other word. That's where I learned what I learned what an office on a political campaign back then. It was for Bob Borski, congressman from Northeast Philly.
With B-O-R-S-K-Y. No, it isn't. S-K-I.
You got it.
But I think he submerged himself into the Y country, which is Jewish, so that he could win in Northeast Philly, because that's where I'm from. It's so interesting when you grow up knowing the difference between I and Y and who that means, and whether it's Polish or it's Jewish, you can figure it out. If the Polish are the Catholics, and they tend to be in our crowd, and then if they're Jewish, they're the Ys.
That's exactly right.
Politics, ethnic politics is so fascinating.
Oh, it's and that's why, again, I say this as, I loved watching your show back in the day. I was learning about politics. I was, and then when I was at Penn, so again, this is the early 90s.
That's the Penn that was pro-Jewish, not the new Penn.
Yeah, the new Penn's, yeah, exactly. The new one, I don't know. I'm Jewish, and I don't know if I'd be as welcome. But yes, that one.
But that's where all the guys in Hollywood, really good guys in Hollywood, the guy that does Law and Order and people like that, and Gary Ross, all the big directors, a lot of them went to Penn because it wasn't a restricted school. It wasn't like Harvard or those kinds of schools. It didn't have those restrictions.
No, right? Early on, it allowed Jews. It was one of the jokes. It would be called the University of Pennsylvania when I was, and we'd say that, as a joke, a lot of us who were Jewish. But it had, I think, 20% or so, something like that. And so when I was there, interestingly enough, I wanted to write this paper. I was a history major, political history, and I wanted to write this paper for my then advisor, a guy named Tom Segru, now teaches at NYU, brilliant guy, on Robert Kennedy and how it would have been different if he had lived, because he could unite the white working class with black voters, and how we never would have gotten to where we were. And of course, I was told that's a poli-sci paper. You can't write that as a history paper, and I didn't. But that's why when I saw your book,
that's Jack Newfield thinking too. That's what Jack Newfield wrote about how he was as sympathetic to white working class people as he was to American Indians or Hispanic Americans or blacks. I mean, he really did say there. He said, "Those are my people."
Yep.
In fact, Frank Mankiewicz told me he loved cops, and he was the one. And a guy told me years ago, an engineer I worked with when I was a Capitol cop, the only liberal Democrat, if you want to call him a liberal, who would say hello to the cops in the morning as he came into the Capitol building was Bobby Kennedy, because this snooty crowd weren't they're so far above the cop. They couldn't imagine communicating with them. I mean, but Bobby did. It's great storytelling.
And you talk about it here in your book, and it's that's what I really enjoyed. It's fascinating because again, in case I didn't get to write that, but I do think we would be a different place if Bobby had lived. So let me kick it over to David because I'm taking too much time.
David Shuster.
Chris, it's so great to have you. So let's start with the news. We're going to talk about the Kennedy book, Bobby Kennedy book, in just a second, but I got to ask you about the news. Cliff and I were just talking about the Miami mayoral race. Democrats haven't won there in 30 years. Now there's a woman mayor, Democrat. She won by 19 points.
Is she Cuban?
She's not. And so I'm sort of wondering, I mean, do you see the sort of wave that a lot of other people see, because have Democrats found their issue by talking nonstop about inflation and affordability?
Yeah, I think if you go back to the 2022 election, not too many years ago, all the talk after Roe v. Wade was challenged in the court and overturned, it was all about abortion rights. It just was. I mean, it just dominated the era. I mean, Fetterman versus Dr. Oz, how that election was turned, it's turned on that issue. And then the next year in 24, it wasn't an issue because the states are pretty much reflective of their thinking of the culture. Pennsylvania has a 23-week, abortion thing where you could have an abortion for, all those weeks through having a baby, and pretty liberal, to put it lightly. And so the people said, yeah, that's taken care of. We're all right. Let's not fight about that one. So McCormick won. Beat Bobby Casey in Scranton. Cartwright, the local congressman, got beaten in Scranton. Joe Biden's candidate, Kamala Harris, got beaten there. It was a big swing. And that's where Trump went yesterday. Trump went up there to the Poconos. It's so interesting. He goes to the Poconos, which is where you commute to go skiing. You didn't go to Utah, you go to the Poconos. Yeah. And he wanted to get up there to try to swing it back a bit, but I don't think he can do it. I think the wave is coming in 26. I think it's 30 plus seats. And I look at it, the experts will tell you, if you have a 13 plus advantage for the Democrats, movement toward the Democrats, you've got a 30 plus seat advantage coming to the Democrats next year. Now, things can change, but I look at what Trump's doing on the economy, and this is kitchen table stuff. If you spend more money in the federal government, which he's spending a lot more of, you're going to drive inflation, because the more spending, more dollars chasing fewer goods. We know what that causes. Tariffs, of course, a one-time, but definitely increase in the cost of living. And then cutting interest rates, more business expansion, more inflation. All these practices of Trump are driving GDP and the debt and driving inflation. What's he doing to reduce inflation right now? And yes, Mr. President, what are you doing to reduce the affordability issue? He says, I'm not talking about it.
It's a hoax.
I'm not talking about it. You know,
and his advisors like Kevin Hassett will go on Fox and Fox Business and CNBC and say, oh, well, we're cutting gas prices, which, okay, you're cutting gas prices, and we're increasing wages. Wages are going up. But the problem is that even if wages are up by, say, $1,500, which is the figure that Kevin Hassett threw out, that the average worker is making $1,500 more now because wages have gone up. But because of inflation, the price of household goods is costing a lot more than $1,500. So people are feeling financially squeezed, even if their salary is higher.
You know, I think I never thought that inflation, the percentage increase in prices, was the way people think about things. They think about what they used to pay for something in their limited stretch of memory, which is like 5 years. I remember paying this much for Philadelphia cream cheese or whatever. A guy called me up a while ago and he said, you know, I used to pay $2 for that cream cheese. Now it's $7. What's going on? And that's how people do it. And my mom used to go to the store with all the savings stamps, you know, to go to Penn Fruit or whatever, A&P, and go look at, and look at it and price check everything. She would check everything to save a couple pennies. And that's what modern people and lower income people live with all the time. How much can they stretch the money that the husband or wife or both of them bring in each week, and how far can you stretch it when you go to the supermarket?
I mean, I'd be scared what my Jim's cheesesteak would cost at this point in time. If I'm being honest with you, Chris, I could afford that in college back then, and now it's probably. And I'm obviously being facetious.
Well, you're a kid, you know. This cheesesteak thing came way later than me. You know, I was back there with Richie Ashburn and stuff like that. I mean, before the cheesesteak thing started, Pat's or whatever it is.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was being facetious anyhow. I mean, again, the price of just groceries and healthcare and these kinds of things, and they just sort of shrug it off and try to write it off as,
okay, you drive past the gas station. Who doesn't look at the price? Who doesn't check it as just going a 5.15 or 4.15 and see how it's moving?
Yeah,
it's right in your face, and that's cash. You have to pay in cash. Right in it. Here's my money. Here's my money. Here's my.
Well, I wonder, Chris, I mean, how much related to this is Donald Trump's own sort of credibility problem? Because he's been talking about, we're at $2 a gallon for gas all the way since July. And then there was a period of a couple of months where he stopped talking about it. And okay, now, sure, there are some places across the country where it's less than $3, but apparently that the source of Donald Trump being so obsessed with this $2 gasoline is there was some report that came out that said that unmixed gasoline back in July was less than $2. Okay,
well, but he was really good, David.
You'll set your car on fire; it'll explode. You have to mix it, and mixing it costs another $1 or so per gallon. So there's your $3. But Donald Trump gets obsessed over these things.
Good. Suppose you're a comic. Suppose you're not on. You go to a comic, you got the brick wall behind you. You got to tell jokes. Suppose you take a year off, and then you come back and try to do it again. That's what Trump's trying to do last night. He took a year off. You go to foreign policy like George Herbert Walker Bush did. The New World Order, it ain't selling at home. The New World Order is of no interest to people at home. The local kitchen table issues of importance to them. And I keep thinking Trump is great at spontaneity. He's rating Zoolander 1 made it, but Zoolander 2 is a little off base. Okay, some guys can do that. Schumer can. I mean, I don't think of any of those leadership down in Washington have any idea how to read the pulse like Trump can. But when you take a year off, you're out of there. And I think he's gone. I think he's got to get back out there on the stump for four or 5 weeks and then get back into the rhythm of what people are actually talking about right now. They have different interests now. It's a country that is short-term in its memory, frighteningly short-term. And
I think the question is, does he, and this is a real question, not even taking a pot shot, which I'll admit I've done before, but does he have the physical stamina and the mental ability to do what he used to do?
Well, the suits have to be redone every couple hours, I mean, the suits have to be redone.
Can you teach him how to tie a tie, by the way? Because he still can't do that.
No, he does it one-ended. I don't have a tie on, but he would always make the one end. You know how you try to sort of equalize your ties when you put them on? You got to figure, well, once I tie it in the knot, it'll go down a little bit, a few inches lower than the backside. But he doesn't do it that way. He fixes so a foot more in the front.
Yes.
He wants that thing all the way down to the bottom.
And his knees.
It's a strange way to light it. And also show it. To never button your coat. And he's trying to show his greatness, I guess. This is part of the greatness we're looking at. And I think, I don't know. Well, I got to go look at the tapes last night and see if it worked with the crowd. I don't think saying affordability is not an issue would have gotten an applause line. I don't see the people jumping out of their seats on that one yet. Hey, you're right about that.
Right.
No, I don't think
Just
so.
a hoax. Yeah, I don't think that works.
Well, the only thing he said, the only sort of acknowledgement that he had about the economy may be causing some people to sacrifice. And he did make some reference to, as the economy transitions and because of the tariffs, that we're going to have to get used to the idea that maybe we all have to buy fewer pencils for our children, and we cannot buy 37 dolls for our kids.
$3. Our kids only need $3. What is that?
Yeah, and it's sort of like, well, okay, maybe that's true, but for Donald Trump, who has, adorned the Oval Office and the White House with all this gold and is building this massive ballroom and has no problem with consumption, for him to be lecturing everybody else about what they can and cannot have, that doesn't work.
Why don't the Democrats? I get lots of advice for the Democrats, but one thing to do is, why don't you make Mar-a-Lago the Bastille? Just make it the bad guy place. With all the people that go who are members of the Bastille down there of Mar-a-Lago are bad guys. They're going down there to get the tax breaks. That's why they moved down there. They got a winter home because they got all the money in the world because of Trump's tax cuts. They're the ones that benefit from Trump. They're the bad guys. Yeah. Attack the Bastille. I really think Democrats have got to stop saying, gee, wish I had as much money as they have. Gee whiz, I wish I was richer. I could afford to go to Mar-a-Lago. No. Don't make Mar-a-Lago, this wonderful place that we're all hoping to get to. But they do, unfortunately, share that. They do want to go to Palm Beach, the Democrats.
But the problem, Chris, and you, again, that's why your book, I think, is so, and I think at some point where you talk about getting tough, like we used to have Democrats that were tough. We used to have Democrats who, and I'm not saying there aren't exceptions. There's some good ones out there, but our leadership, and you brought this up, advice for them. I mean, there's no straightforward message. There's no hitting hard on what you're talking about. The message I heard that came out from Hakeem Jeffries' office the other day was like strong floor, no ceiling, I think. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with that.
Well, first of all, the staff.
Is this a house?
I will now take a shot. It's a cheap one. The staff who works for these guys. I mean, how much money do you make working for Schumer and have to cook up every couple of days a decent set of talking points? It shouldn't be that hard to be creative, to do it in a way that you put it on the front page. I used to, when I worked for Tip O'Neill, I'd say, hold the front page. I'll have something for you at 5, because I wanted to make sure they held it. And I would give them some great line that I wanted to be on like the Beverly Hills budget about Reagan. We call it the Beverly Hills budget. Why not? We'll put that on the front page, and that'll be something you'll know about it. Or Ronald Reagan would walk a mile for a camera. We would make fun of him, and there's no fun in it. The tricky part of Trump, and this is not politics, it's just basic human communication. He knew how to say something in a different way.
Yes.
And he would talk about somebody being an Indian American or somebody being Little Marco. I don't think Marco's ever going to outlive that one.
Especially not now. That picture of him with his head in his hands during the Zelensky.
I think you're right. I like it when he says, I can't, the groan that you can see there. the groan in his face that says, "I can't believe this jackass is calling the shots."
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And I mean, but you're right. Trump is great at reading a crowd. And he's great at defining opponents in a sort of very, demeaning way.
He has what I called, when I worked for Tip, they never said it to him because he didn't understand it, Jewish humor. Quick snappers, one-liners, not long, boring stories. The Irish stories, they're always boring, but really quick snappers. Don Rickles.
Great poets, the Irish.
You got to go back at them.
Yeah.
No,
I'm kidding. Go ahead, Chris.
And no, I think quick snapperoos back and forth is the way the newspaper columns are written. Is you put a half a sentence in. Bobby Kennedy once said, "It's better to have 1 minute on ABC, the weakest network at the time, than be on the front page of the New York Times." Yes, it is better to be on ABC. It's better to have one quote where you're being seen saying it than having some half a paragraph snipped. It just isn't.
Absolutely right. That's how we communicate. It's gotten, as you know, even more that way. Your show, which everybody should watch, Hardball, is now on Substack. So you understand, Jim Acosta is on Substack. I mean, these things are changing. People are watching Substack. They're watching YouTube. And it's gotten even more so. You need a one-line clip or quip. You need quick sort of, messaging like that. And we just, our leadership, at least, there, as I said, there are exceptions. Gavin Newsom has been, at least with the negative stuff and mocking Trump.
How do you go from being, Cliff, how do you go, and David, how do you go from being a lightweight, empty suit, to being the paramount #1 clear-cut candidate for 28? How do you do that?
How did Gavin Newsom do it?
How do you do it? How do you do it?
Well,
David,
my theory, Chris, is something you're sort of talking about. Gavin Newsom is having fun. He's the happy warrior. He's delivering the barbs that maybe some Democrats think, oh, that's beneath us or beneath our party. We can't go low. He's going low. He's having a good time. He's playing Donald Trump's game, and he's having a good time with it. And as a result, people are like, yeah, this is a guy who's willing to stick it to Donald Trump as he's smiling and laughing at Trump. And I feel like that's resonating.
Will it work with J.D. Vance?
Wow. Cliff, you're in Ohio. I don't think
J.D. Vance is the guy making fun of him. I mean, I don't know. I've
can
talked
you
a lot about that.
Last year's battle versus next year's battle. I mean,
yeah, well, I think so. I've talked a lot about that painful episode where he walked in and had to order donuts, and it turned into like, somebody having to actually launch a spaceship or something. Him just picking out a couple donuts in a donut shop here in Ohio. He's very easy to parody because the thing about Trump is Trump may say crazy things, but as you've said, Trump can communicate with people. J.D. Vance cannot communicate with people very well at all. I mean, he's very awkward. I think you can do that to him.
How does he attack all immigrants? I mean, I have a real problem with the way Joe Biden didn't deal with illegal immigrants, but he's against all immigrants. And I keep thinking, what's his wife doing here? I mean, doesn't she have some role in all this immigrant story? You ever see the picture of him with his whole family that someone was sharing it the other day, and his wife's family? It's like, this is the guy who's the white supremacist. I mean, he's the only white guy. First of all, she's a beautiful human being.
Of course.
Last night at the dinner my wife took me to, and I go, yeah, I didn't recognize her at first, but she said, have you met Usha? And I met her now. And, it's a pretty dramatic story of a very attractive, obviously, immigrant. But some of these guys don't seem to recognize their role. Even Trump in the immigration story, Melania.
Mm.
I mean,
I know.
Does he get the joke?
I don't know. Listen, I think he seems to never think it will. He thinks like a goldfish, as they say, 30 seconds and it's gone, because he brought, he's the one who pushed the Epstein files stuff, never thinking it would come back to bite him. He never thinks these things will rebound on him, it seems to me.
Who do you think's the scariest guy about the Epstein files if they're finally going to get released now? Do you think it's Prince Andrew, or is it?
Well, Andrew's already paid a price, right? He's been stripped of his title and thrown out of Windsor Castle and all the rest. I actually think it is Trump. I mean, because even if, look, this was the 90s and maybe Donald Trump in between marriages, maybe he and Epstein were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And at the time, okay, I guess in that context, it might be understood. But now, if Donald Trump was, according to Michael Wolff, Donald Trump had naked teenage girls on his lap, pointing at a stain in his crotch and his pants, and they were laughing. If that photograph actually comes out, or if there's videos of Donald Trump with teenage girls doing stuff like that, I don't, how does Donald Trump survive? Republicans are looking at a 32% approval rating right now, a loss of 35 seats because of Donald Trump. I think some Republicans would go for, let's get the guy out of here.
Is that the same as shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue? I mean, I don't know what the Fifth Avenue standard is. What's the crossing of the line where the guy in somewhere up around Scranton goes, that's it with that guy. He's off my list. He doesn't go to church like I do. He's not what I thought he was. I don't know.
You know what I want to ask, Chris? I'm going to ask you, and it's going to be in the language I learned from you when I read your book, Hardball, before, and so I'm going to put it this way. How does he hang a lantern on his problem? Is it possible?
First of all, I don't think he's capable of it. He's not capable of saying, I lost.
I'll explain to all of you what that means when Chris is done.
It means be the first one to talk about your disability, the dishonesty, when you have a failure. Bobby Kennedy was always accused of being ruthless and getting his brother elected to the Senate and then to the presidency, and he was.
Yep.
But he was also the guy, according to Ken O'Donnell, with the real heart, where Jack could be pretty cold with people. He was the real guy who cared about people. And I've heard that from Schlesinger and other historians that Bobby was the good guy in that regard. I don't know if he's capable of saying, I owe you $5 million, but I'm not paying it back, because he isn't going to pay it back. He doesn't want it. A guy told me, a very prominent Washington guy told me here in the district, he owes me $5 million. And I said, why don't you try to get it back? He said, it's too much trouble. I mean, the guy just doesn't pay his bills. He doesn't pay his lawyers. He doesn't pay anybody. He never acknowledges he owes anybody anything. He's a gonif. He's the worst. He's a crook.
It always makes me wonder why these people keep working for him. Do any of them actually ever expect to get paid?
It's till your number comes up. It's not till you actually have to realize the fact the guy you're chief of staff for hates you, or he's going to come out and get you and you're commie, or anybody. He will come for you too. Right. It's like, who's the liar that you don't know he's a liar till he lies about you? And you go, I get it now. A little late, but I got it.
Chris, you talk in the book about the Kennedy toughness, the ruthlessness, as you mentioned, with Bobby Kennedy. And to sort of tie it to some of the news we've all been talking about for the last several days, these boat strikes. There was a Republican, I think Senator Schmidt from Missouri, who came out and said, Democrats have lost the plot. Republicans, Donald Trump, are killing narco-terrorists. Everybody in America knows somebody who's died from an overdose. Americans want these people dead. Putting aside the morality, and I think the morality and legality, we all sort of know where we are, but in terms of raw politics, how does this cut politically?
Well, if you're in a really bad off community, a poor place where there's no factories left, there's really no more dream in the place. And a lot of small towns are like this. They don't even have a gift shop. Remember the gift shops? I'm old enough to remember gift shops. They don't exist anymore. There's just a Walmart somewhere near town, and there's no local stores. There's nothing really hopeful. There's no newspaper, of course. And you think, but there is drugs. And how the hell the drugs get in there? You don't even know how they get in there. I had a family member involved in this, a nephew, and it was like, who are these kids that sell this stuff? How did he get hooked and hooked again? And you have to get people arrested. It's horrendous, and it's not like anybody's fault locally. So somebody's shopping this stuff and bringing it in and selling it, and getting kids hooked on it. And why are some 15-year-old kid getting hooked on drugs? I mean, the idea of drinking a little underage was something I did, but the idea of going for drugs was unimaginable. Shooting something up your arm? Are you kidding me? How do you get to that level of depravity, of hopelessness? And I do agree that the fact that morally they think that if that kid's in the water, some guy's in the water delivering drugs in the United States, get him out of here. He's gone. And I think that is the mentality, because it's the worst off people who get killed with all this horrible stuff, horrible drugs. And we don't know where it came from. But where's this stuff coming from? Where'd you get it from? Who sold you this crap? Who is it? And these kids won't talk, or some friend of mine talked to me. got him, sold it to me. I know that stuff. I know how it's got. And I think when you're already hard up financially and culturally, you're at the end of the pew, or if they're anywhere, you did. And then finally you get hit with drugs.
But so the problem here is I
think Trump is probably, when it comes down to it, is not going to pay a price for blowing up these boats. Maybe it should be the Coast Guard doing it, but the going in for the second attack with the people clinging to the side of the boat. We all know from war movies, you put your hands up and you get captured.
Yeah,
that's it. That's how it works.
Well, and I pointed out in something I wrote recently how, seeing the movie Nuremberg out right now.
I'm seeing it tonight again, the second time.
I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, well, Russell Crowe is spellbinding as Goering and should probably win another Academy Award.
And Robbie Mook.
Yes.
Robbie Mook just blew me away. I said, where did he come from in this movie? And he's playing a character that may not even have existed, but he's the psychiatrist who's trying to figure out whether Hermann Goering is just another Northern European who broke bad, or he's uniquely evil. And he's
and he's charming, right? And he's got this.
He's definitely charming.
But my whole thing is, so here we were trying to create this new kind of paradigm where we decide Robert Jackson, obviously Supreme Court Justice, and we decided we were going to give the worst monsters a trial, but we're sitting here going back a second time to guys clinging on a boat, and we can't even pick them up in Venezuela. When I put those two things next to each other, how far we've come from that. I mean, I get it, what you're saying about drugs in this country, and obviously, but they can't even prove these guys, two of the guys that were repatriated in Colombia and Ecuador, they released immediately and said, we have no proof. First of all, they weren't Venezuelan. Second of all, they said,
let's get back to honesty here. And who do you trust?
Yeah.
To get a job in this administration, as opposed to the first Trump presidency, you had to lie. You had to join him in a lie. You had to say he won the 2020 election. Well, he didn't win it. He didn't win it. And so why are you saying he did? And I think that's one problem. You did it to get the job. So all these guys, Hegseth, the whole bunch of them, all of them lied, joined Trump in the lie. And this is the lie that led to the attack on the Capitol and all this third world crap about if you lose an election, it was stolen. If you win the election, you arrest everybody. This is what happens in third world countries. Ali Bhutto in Pakistan gets hanged because he lost an election. I'm sorry. That's how it works in those countries. They're beginning democracies, you can say. But, Zimbabwe, everything was stolen. If you lose an election, it was stolen. If you win the election, God help the other side. And I think that's what Trump.
But somehow Brazil handled it better than we did.
United States America into these Yahoo countries. How did he do it? Where he can actually say to all his crowd, give me 12,000 votes, buddy, Raffensperger down in Atlanta. Give me 12, but that's how many I know I need. He admitted he lost this election. And by the way, if he didn't lose the 2020 election, why did he leave?
Right. Well, and also, Chris, you're a historian.
Hey, Melania, pack your bags, get out of here. We got to leave. Why do we have to leave? Because we lost.
Right. And you're a historian, Chris. I know you love history. You've written about it. I mean, we know that a number of guys, when Lincoln was there and we were heading towards the Civil War, were kicked out because they wouldn't accept Lincoln's victory. And they said that is sedition against the United States. I mean, there is a 14th Amendment. We do have these rules, but we decided to just, Merrick Garland, I guess, decided to go on vacation for a while. I don't know what he was doing those first 2 years, because how somebody could do what he did on January 6th, as well as the meetings at the Willard Hotel.
You ask a Cliff, that's a great question. Why did Democrats hang around? Why they messed around? Why couldn't they do the job? Their big job when they came in 20 was to deal with what happened on the 21st of that year, or the first 6th of that year. Were they going to do something about that? What was Garland working for? I don't know what he was waiting for.
I don't know either. They took as long. I like to point this out to people that when Garland started investigating, which was 18 months later, by that time, exact time frame, 18 months after the Brazilian election, they had already indicted Bolsonaro. How is it that Brazil is doing that and we're not? I mean, what the hell's wrong with us?
I don't know. I can't complain. Brazilian versus U.S.
I know. I'm just making a point. Like, where have we fallen to? where we can't even, this guy said stuff out loud, did stuff in the open, and we managed to not, during 4 years, hold him accountable so he could never run again.
Yeah, good question.
Well, Chris, you write in the book about the lessons of Bobby. One of them, which I think was remarkable, is when you lose, concede. That it's not enough just to, okay, who won, I lost. But there's something particularly American about when you run a political race and you lose an election, you admit defeat. Have we gone beyond that now? I mean, is the playbook now for Republicans?
Okay,
they lose the House, tie everything up in recounts and.
It's one of the great things that I discovered about Bobby when he lost the Oregon primary. He lost the Oregon primary a week before he was assassinated. And Patrick Buchanan from the other side, from Nixon's world, was there. And he said, I've never seen anything so impressive as Bobby's acknowledgement of his defeat to Gene McCarthy. He congratulated Gene McCarthy on his victory. And when I think about American politics, in 1958, I watched my first political event. It was the concession speech by Averell Harriman, the governor of New York, who just lost to Nelson Rockefeller. And my father was we're down in the basement watching the television. And my dad was obviously taken with it. He said, that's a good man, Averell Harriman. And my dad was a Republican. And he said, you could tell that he was identifying with this old money guy, this old, enormously wealthy guy who never had a real job in his life. But he could understand what a person feels like when you have to acknowledge defeat. And I really think that's the key. Adlai Stevenson did it beautifully when he lost to Eisenhower in 52. And Nixon did it finally when Kennedy called him and said, let's meet in the Key Biscayne. So he made sure he got that on television, because it has to be delivered on television. You have to see the person say to you, this election's over, I lost, the other guy won. And that's the beauty of American politics, always was until Trump came along, because if you don't see the loser declare the victory for the other guy, you don't quite believe it. You say, wait a minute, what was this about? No, I lost. And that's what John McCain did. It's what Mitt Romney did. All these people, Hillary Clinton did.
Al Gore in 2000.
Al Gore presided over the electoral votes.
So did Humphrey. So did Humphrey. So did Nixon. They had to preside as vice president. And to see our victim, how do you know who won? The loser told me. That's the beauty of our system. And Trump wouldn't belly up to the altar where you have to say that. Don't run for office, buddy, if you can't do that. If you can't accept your defeat. Why? Because he's just awful. I'm sorry. This is the one awful thing he's done, which is to fail the American test of honest elections. And he's never going to fix it. He'll never fix it. He'll still lie about it. This is a good question to ask a Trumpy. Give me the states that Trump really won in 2020. The ones that he didn't get credit for. Just give me the states, because I want to know how that worked. Where did he win Pennsylvania? I don't think so. Did he win Michigan? No, I don't think so. I don't think he won Wisconsin either. So where were these states that he really won the election?
I think it was Atlantis and Gondondaland and Pandora. And I'm just sorry. I mean,
they don't have to, Cliff, they believe in their heads. They don't have to tell you. Yeah. They don't have to tell you where he really, really won. They just have to swear to it. That's all. They
feel like he won, so he won, right? It's a feeling.
Oh yeah. Well, a feeling of. Well, that's like asking somebody in Washington or Seattle who's going to win the next election. The Democrats, of course, because that's who they're surrounded by.
Right. Well, what was her name? The famous one that wrote that she couldn't understand why McGovern lost because all her friends voted for McGovern. I can't think of who it was. The famous journalist. It was like
that's what Harriman actually said about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, who's Jimmy Carter? I don't know who. I don't think I've met him.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a wider world out there, and again, but and I will say this: why I always, and this is not to cast aspersions on anybody else. There are a lot of great reporters and whatever, but I've said this to David before. Why I really always enjoyed watching in back in those days your show, and I enjoyed watching Lawrence O'Donnell, is because you guys had worked either in the Senate on campaigns. Yeah. You guys understood what you're talking about. There's other people that are very smart, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but to me, as somebody who's been in those trenches, unless you've been there and been in that situation, I don't think you can ever truly understand what is going on, what the strategy, when people are freaking out over a story coming and hitting you. Like, I can only imagine what the George W. Bush people were going through when the drunk driving thing came out, like a day or two before the election.
I didn't want to tell my kids. Why don't you tell your kids? That's a good lesson to tell them. I got picked up for drunken driving. Well, that's a good lesson to tell your kids. It's not assassinating yourself. You're just saying, I'm imperfect. I made some mistakes as a kid. Don't drink too much when you're driving. You know what reminds me of? So I went to my high school freshman year parent night. So they come and meet the parents. You get free ice cream cones and everything. It was a big night for the kids, for the teachers. So we come in and he goes to meet my history teacher. And he comes out of the room and he said, that guy's a fraud. And then my father just said, he's a fraud. He said, that guy's underlining the next day's lecture in the textbook. That's how far ahead he is in the class. He's that far ahead, just underlining the sentences he's going to bark out to us. And I think some people in the politics world, former strategist, talk about Democratic strategist. I go, okay, which strategy have you ever written? Where have you been in the trenches? Have you ever been where you neaded a strategy? No, right. They were a driver for somebody. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what it is. Or they wrote a column, Anyway,
anybody can call themselves a strategist. That's the thing.
They've never been in the office where they're scared to death they're going to lose the next election. Their boss is pounding on them because you said something wrong the day before, or it turned out to be wrong, which is normal. You do make mistakes in politics, and you learn from it. It's a learning profession, as Arthur Schlesinger said. You learn from it. That's how it works. Day by day, you pick up the paper and you read it, and you know more than the day before. That's how it works.
It always would never, let's say it wasn't fun getting beat on by, and not physically, but having people being angry, when you made a mistake or whatever. But I always say I learned more from elections where we lost, but maximized our potential and did everything we could do than the easy wins, right? I worked on Clinton's 96 race, was my first one out of college. And like that whole time, I could have just been lying on a beach. I mean, we were like polling in Utah and places because why the hell not? Like,
he had to
beat Dole. Bob Dole, we're going to beat him by.
Go
ahead, sorry.
Got 6 points, and
yeah, I mean, we were gonna beat Dole by 6, 8, 10 points no matter what we did. So I mean, I'll never forget towards the end of that race, it wasn't even that difficult. But I learned a lot more on races where when I worked against Mitch McConnell, for example, when we got our butts handed to us, I learned a lot more from that than I did.
What makes the Democrats run in Texas every year and say, we got it won this year. We're going to pull with Biddo, what his name? I keep thinking, you're going to win again. I said, yeah, you're going to win again. Waste more of my money and time with it. And let's go to Kentucky with a woman candidate. Oh, we're going to win with a woman candidate. Oh, great. Kentucky's culture is going to change overnight. Come on. Mitch is going to win and you're going to lose. And why are we talking about it?
Here's a great story. You'll appreciate this, Chris. I met my wife on this race, so I always say it was the best race I worked on.
Good.
But it was 2002. I was working for Lois Combs Weinberg, was the candidate against him. Now, her dad was Burt Combs, this popular governor who had actually paved the roads in eastern Kentucky, Democratic governor of Kentucky. Instead, she takes her husband's name, Weinberg. So you've got a woman candidate, and I'm sorry, folks, I'm just telling you the truth about Kentucky, particularly even 20 years ago, and named Weinberg. And I'll never forget, it showed up in the hotline where they were like, somebody interviewed somebody in eastern Kentucky who said, we're not really comfortable voting for somebody with that name here. And it was like, why didn't you run as Lois Combs? You maybe at least have a shot. But I mean, these are realities we have to face with that name and McConnell's machine. A lot of people didn't even know she was Burt Combs' daughter, so we were screwed, I mean,
remember Jack Nicholson in the Few Good Men?
Yeah.
Yes.
Weinberg, or what your name is.
That's right. That was absolutely a Jewish. He's like, you Lieutenant Weinberg. Like everybody who knew what that was right there. Yes.
I knew what he was up to. Yeah. He's not the good guy. Not the good guy.
So
that on that front, coming into 28, which we are fast careening towards, I think. I don't know. I think about Josh Shapiro. I keep thinking he's talented, interesting guy, and I think you can argue. Now, this is a little thin argument, maybe, but I think he can win all the states Democrats can win. That's an interesting way of saying it. If you go from Michigan, Wisconsin, then you have to take something of a leap. You go through Illinois, of course, all winnable. And then you get to Arizona and Nevada. Then you have to fly all the way out to Jimmy Carter. I was on a plane with him. We're flying from Michigan to to Portland, Oregon. And David Rubenstein's on the plane with us. He later became a very successful business guy. And as we're flying across, somebody said, "Why can't we stop somewhere?" This is the night before the election in 1980 against Reagan. "Why can't we stop somewhere?" And then David allows, because there's not a state we're flying over we have a chance of carrying. So you have that big part of the country, the Rocky Mountains, where you can't win with anybody, an ethnic background. But then you can win Portland, you can win Oregon, you win Washington State, you win California. So you can win. So it just means there's a number of states you probably are best not spending a lot of time in. That's if Josh Shapiro is the nominee. But it's going to be interesting, carefully organized and strategized, and he could win. It's just a little more difficult. It just is like it always is with Catholics.
Well, and I got to ask you, Chris, about the Republican side, because the ultimate demolition derby. I mean, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz wants to run. Marjorie Taylor Greene is apparently laying the groundwork for. And
no,
Ted Cruz. That's what I love.
Look,
Marjorie Taylor Greene
personality matters. David, personality matters in the end. In the end, you watch the guy or woman on television, you go, "Yeah, I think I like him. I think I can figure out why I like this person." And usually it's the economy that moves you in that direction to what you like. You don't like the way things are going, you want to change. So the change candidate looks better. If you like the way things are, George Herbert Walker Bush he's okay. You keep the things the way they're going.
But he was kind of neutral, though. Has anybody ever had that reaction to Ted Cruz? Like, I like that guy.
No, I think it was Al Franken who said, he said, "I like him more than most people, and I hate him."
So there you go. Right.
And by the way, Al Franken would have been a great senator. I don't know the infractions, how I think they were over. I think
he was a
I don't know what they did, but maybe there's something I don't know. But I thought that what we heard about it wasn't as the worst thing in the world. And I think there must have been some way to deal with that issue besides losing one of the really good senators.
Agree. He was fantastic. And I still think they brought stuff up from his career when he was being a comedian, which is a different career than being a
politician. And by the way, that kind of behavior, he once got me to go on a USO trip. It's just a great thing to go on. These guys, comedians, you know why they go, but they wanted me to go too, could talk politics. And he was always going on these USO trips. And that was where some of that happened. And you go, wait a minute, that was kind of a joke. I mean, it's like, it's fun. It's like a Bob Hope trick, okay? Nobody's examining what Bob Hope did on the trips. It's just he's over there for the GIs. And I just thought.
No, I'm still upset about that. I think he would have, I think he could. I mean, he's terrific. And I hope maybe he'll come back. I don't know. I wish he would and run again.
I agree. Well, I think he was great. I say that as if my wife and I would sit and listen to that last book of his on tape. It's a riot. A giant of the Senate.
He's just brilliant and he's funny. And I was lucky enough to meet him a few times. It just seemed like the nicest guy in the world. And I just, we let there were legitimately a few horrible people out there, and we let that kind of make it so that we threw everybody in the same bucket. I'm sorry, like not everybody's Harvey Weinstein, it's a different thing. So,
yeah.
So out of your book, taking lessons from your book from Bobby, what lessons from Bobby would you give to Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Ken Martin and any Democrats right now so that they would hopefully get tougher and message better? Are there lessons they can learn from Bobby?
Well, you can be somewhat dramatic about this. When Bobby died, the train from St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York took him to Arlington, where he was going to join his brother, both dead of assassination. And that trip took about 8 hours. The train traveled low. Some people got killed in that train going from New York to Washington.
Oh, wow.
But along the lines, the picture, the real legacy of Bobby was the people, bringing people together. In Philadelphia, there's 20,000 people that were singing spontaneously the Battle Hymn of the Republic on the 30th Street station platform. In between those stops, between Trenton and Philly and between Trenton and Newark, were white people, really poor people. I mean, like really poor. And they were, some of them standing in military position, saluting. One of the guys got a picture taken with all his kids in birth order lined up. So the respect from both crowds, black and white, were real. Somehow, Bobby held on to the New Deal or the New Frontier of his brother, and he kept the working class white on his side. And he had them in, he would drive through Gary, Indiana, a tough town, steel town, with Tony Zale on one side. Tony Zale's the guy who beat Rocky Graziano 2 out of 3 bouts. It's not in the movies. Somebody up there likes me. They're the two that he lost to Tony Zale. He was the man of steel, they called him. And on the other side of him, in an open car, he had Richard Hatcher, the first black mayor of Gary. So he's really kind of demonstrate to the people, I'm with both this group. I'm with both your crowds. And I think we can work together. The factory worker should be able to keep his job, and the kid in the bad neighborhood should be able to get a job. And I'm going to try to do this whole thing. And I'm going to bring, he said, that's what this election is going to be about. And it was also because it was the Vietnam era, the battle between fathers and sons. I had the battle with my father. You know, World War II was not Vietnam. I'm sorry. We're losing this one, by the way. This is not a winning combination. This is going to be bad, especially after Tet. This is going to be terrible. And I think that was one thing he wanted to do, is unite people. This character we have now, which is who you have to think about, is a divider. I mean, everything. And look, we all have there is a racial problem in this country. This didn't begin with Donald Trump. But the idea that everybody who's brown from Latin America has to be kept out. Everybody who's foreign has to be kept out. DEI is evil, excuse me. Shithole countries, terms like that are horrible. I know what he's meaning by it, because they are difficult economic countries in the third world, and in Africa. I spent 2 years over there. There are tough cities. But trashing places where people came from, like Somaliland, or it was once Somaliland, Somalia now, it's horrible. It's making fun of people's basic humanity. That's what you're doing. You're saying you come from that place. That's what you are. Oh my God, that's fighting words. And, I mean, this guy should be played by Jack Palance in the movies. He's like the bad guy in Shane. He's the guy who's the bad guy who just wants to fight. And I think the people that are rooting for him love it because they're not happy with the elite cultural people in this country, the people in the bubble who think they're better than them, the people that look down on them. I understand how he's doing it. I don't like the fact he's doing it, but I know how he does it. Those people are angry. I've got relatives like this. I go, I don't even bring up Trump with them because I know it's just going to hurt people, hurt both sides. And I said, let's not talk, we don't talk about it. But I keep thinking this Trump guy has figured out to be as nasty as possible. Shoot him out of the water. Fire them, get rid of DEI, get rid of affirmative action, get rid of everything that helps poor black people or poor people, and somehow the other people like us. And that's how it works. It's terrible.
We need to be able to run people who I think appeal to those same coalitions. And I always point out, again, I mean, there's others out there, but I point to Sherrod Brown in this state, who overperformed,
I hope he pulls it off.
Kamala Harris by 8 points. He only lost by 3 points last time. And I would say right now in this atmosphere, he absolutely will win here.
In this atmosphere, winning by 13 points in Tennessee. If we keep winning like that, the Democrats keep winning like that in Virginia or in Bucks County, where they just swept all the offices.
What was that, the first time since 1891 in Bucks County?
Huh?
I think it was the first time we had elected the district attorney since 1891. The Democrats in Bucks County, I think something crazy like that. It'd been a long. My point is,
I think the Democrats have fix some things. They got to fix up the border issue. They got to deal with a reasonable way of bringing it into the country legally, and not all this illegal stuff. They got to find some way of addressing that issue. And right now, with the border being closed, it's a good time to do it. They don't want to think it. I know they don't want to think it. They think that if they stay away from it, it's going to be their favorite issue. No, it's never. An open border will never be their favorite issue for the country. And they have to cut a deal now. The Republicans would probably have a deal. Find a deal that's fair, to Hispanic population as well as the rest of the people waiting in line. There's nothing more American than a naturalization ceremony. I've been to them. They're unbelievable. They're unbelievable. They're the UN. You go, wait a minute, this is the best thing in the world. Everybody wants to be an American, and they've all passed the tests of getting ready to be an American. They know the founding fathers better than we do. And that's
better
the way
than
to
most
do it.
Americans. You're right. I mean, they know, they study. They're there. I agree. I've been to.
And then why do we keep walking over, dancing away from it like Biden did? It just, it's going to go away. No, it's not. The New York Times did a study on this weekend showing he let it all happen. He just pandering. It's called pandering.
Well,
and you got to stand up for things.
Yeah, we need in a humane way to address it and the issue, because the rule of law matters. And we need to have laws, and we need to address folks here in a humane way. And we can come up with a reasonable policy. We can't.
We have to.
Yeah.
Because you can't arrest the person who's sitting next to you in church and praying with you, who's been here 20 years and hauling them off to the border. You can't keep doing that. And I don't think anybody really wants that. I think they want get rid of the criminals. Of course, they'll find their way back in anyway. We could throw them out by 5 countries away. They'll come back somehow. And the Chinese that come over here and somehow find a hole in the wall and come up through Texas, some of these people are going to find a way in. But generally speaking, you can figure out a way to make the border not an issue, I think.
I think actually, if you do it in a smart way, I think you could hang a lantern on that problem, Chris. I think you can turn it into a positive and show how we're for the rule of law.
You were a very good
student,
student.
for compassion.
You're an excellent student of the 10 rules of Bobby Kennedy.
Chris, he's only telling you about part of his college experience. Trust me. But hey, Chris, you've been really.
I'm leaving out, if you ever went by, Murph's or Smokes or anything in West Philly, some of the nights I spent there drinking a little too much, what was it?
Smoky Joe's. Smoky Joe's, isn't that there?
Yeah, Smoky Joe's was our bar. That's the one I went to, and probably left a lot of my liver there. So,
my daughter went to Penn. We were rich enough to afford that. And she's tried out a fraternity, a sorority. I don't know. I think it's Jewish mainly. I think so. Most of her pals were. And I keep thinking that's one of the good sororities. And it was down the road there, past some of the tough neighborhood places. You
know who was in that sorority?
The black guys in the neighborhood looked out for the sorority girls. They were looked out.
No, we had a good relationship. Like there really was. As I tell you, while I was there, the one who was in Tri Delt, who I knew, I wasn't close with, but I knew through some friends of mine, was the now actress Elizabeth Banks, who was a Tri Delt at Penn while I was there, and John Legend was there while I was there too.
I remember John Legend there, and Kenny Bergen.
Yeah, so I screwed up because I didn't become like a Hollywood. Like all these guys came out and they raised the average amount of money that the graduates were making and make me look bad,
Dick Wolf, Richard Wolf, he went to Penn, and Gary Ross. Gary Ross went there.
Now the one I'm going to apologize to everybody for is Elon Musk, who was there while I was there, and I used to be proud of that. Not anymore.
I don't think so.
No. Hey, Chris, you've been really generous with your time, and we appreciate it. And to everybody who's watching, the book is Lessons from Bobby, 10 Reasons Robert F. Kennedy Still Matters by the one and only Chris Matthews. Love you, Chris. Thanks so much for doing
Give me a title. Give me a goal for the next book. I need another hero. I can't.
What are you looking for? Can it be political, military? What are you looking for?
That's a great question. I mean, I could do Winston Churchill, but the publishers say that's already done. I think I don't know. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge.
I think my nomination, and we can't identify them yet, is because of this. But the people who were on the boats on the U.S. Navy ships who were being told those records, those photographs, those videos you took of those 2 guys we rescued, delete them. And they said, no, we're not. And then they were forwarded, you have to delete them. And then these people made contact with U.S. senators and became whistleblowers. To me, those are the heroes, the people.
And they also recorded that they were against it. They made sure that in the record they had opposed it and they did not want to do it. So
it reminds me of Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Atlanta, Georgia, who made a point of taping his interview with Donald Trump. So when Trump called up as president of the United States at the time, illegally telling him, come up with 12,000 votes. I need them. He had that on tape.
How that was not it.
Never going back to that again.
Yeah, how that was not it. Okay, but I'm going to make a project of mine. I'll think of someone for you, Chris. There's some good people, because every once in a while I think, there's someone, what's his name? The Supreme Court Justice, the one who voted against Plessy versus Ferguson. I can't think of his name right now, but there was one, and he wrote Justice Harlan, I believe it was. He wrote, I'd call it a Jeremiah, like this just long speech ripping apart their thinking and saying how wrong it was. I've always thought if I get a chance to write a book, that's who I want to write a book on. So there's one for you. I'm sure there are others who've stood up at that moment in history and did the right thing.
Profiles of courage.
Yes, exactly that.
Thank you. It's great being on
Chris.
Cliff. Shuster, my buddy.
Great to see you, my friend.
Thanks so much for being here, Chris. Really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Good show, Cliff Schecter. Well done.
Right, great show. Take care, everyone. Good being here. And David, I'll see you later. All right, folks, that was a lot of fun. That was fascinating. And I loved watching Chris growing up because I learned from reading about him, his books. I learned that he knew politics. He knows politics in and out. Incredible. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We will be back tomorrow. David's off. It'll be me. Carlin Betcha is joining us. Lawrence Winterman will sit in with me. And we've got some great folks coming up over the next week. And then there'll be Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, anything, if you get the poll for Festivus, and beyond that, then we'll go into the new year. We already have some great folks booked. So thank you for all your support. Thank you for all of you who've read the article by Melissa and David that broke the news in Venezuela. Thank you to all of you who've watched here. Please keep supporting us because, again, hopefully we've shown you support us. We're going to do some cool stuff with it and hopefully break some news and bring some interesting people out here for you to see. It's really been a pleasure being a part of this. And that is all I have, my friends. So as the sun sets slowly in the west, my friends, I bid you a fond farewell.